Hello everybody, my name is Pixel and welcome to the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel. Earlier today, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare beta finally hit the PC, so I thought it would be a good idea to check out the performance of the game running across a range of our graphics cards. The first of which is going to be the Sapphire Pulse RX 570 at 1080p and utilising a wide range of graphical settings. There is some good news, there's some not so good news, and there is also a massive caveat, so let's start off with that. The Ground War 32 vs 32 game mode was not currently available at the time of recording this video, which means that I've got no footage of it on the RX 570. Now, due to my girlfriend being very heavily pregnant and due to drop a baby in a couple of days, I did not want to wait to see if it would become available just in case I then missed the chance to make this entire video. However, that said, I will go back and record Ground War on the RX 570 providing that it's out and I'm not too busy to actually do so. But anyway, on to the good news. We tested the Sapphire Pulse RX 570 at 1080p and utilising the in-game maximum settings, and we still smashed our 60 FPS target, often with our frame rate hovering between the 70 and 90 FPS mark. This is extremely good news because it could mean that we will have enough headroom to actually maintain 60 FPS in Ground War. However, we're going to have to test that, you can't just take my word for it. Visually, on its maximum settings, I don't actually think that the game looks too bad. Unfortunately, however, this does require you to use the Filmic SMA A2X at its maximum setting, otherwise the image kind of breaks apart and becomes really grainy and noisy. This seems to be mainly linked to the game's implementation of depth of field, and I have to admit, it doesn't look pretty. The side effect of also using Filmic SMA A2X is that the overall image presentation becomes incredibly soft, which can make the game actually look blurry. What's worse is that there is no way to disable this depth of field effect, so you are literally stuck between having to pick between a noisy grainy image or a blurry image, and there's really no in between. This is really a major issue for me because this is the first game in a very long time where I've actually found myself literally getting headaches while playing it. Now, I have to be clear, I do wear glasses and the image is blurry so my eyes are struggling to focus, so this is something that affects me and may not affect you, but it is definitely worth pointing out. Oh, by the way, if you've noticed any flickering textures in any of the footage that you've seen so far, don't worry too much about that. That appears to be due to a couple of broken settings that are available in the options menu. Basically, the cache spot shadows and the cache sun shadows appears to be fairly broken at the moment. By disabling these, we get rid of any of the flickering, and hopefully these are two things that can be fixed before the full release. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that through a recent driver update, AMD has enabled the use of Radeon image sharpening on selected 500 series cards, and the Sapphire Pulse RX 570 is one of them. This means that by going into your AMD software and enabling the image sharpening, you will be able to use it in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, as it is indeed a DirectX 12 title. I can't understate how important I think that this feature is right now because, like I mentioned earlier, the SMAA implementation here is overly soft and can leave the game looking blurry, and thankfully that contrast adaptive sharpening can bring back quite a lot of that detail into the image. Now, with that out of the way, let's have a quick look at what happens when you lower the graphical settings, as this is where things start to get interesting. The footage that you are seeing right now was all recorded on minimum settings other than the texture quality which we left on high. As you should be able to see, the overall presentation was much sharper, but to be honest, maybe a little bit too sharp, as we are seeing an awful lot of aliasing on the corners and straight lines, and that grain and noise effect that we were talking about earlier is really blowing out here. Normally, when people start lowering their settings to this level, they are doing it for one or two reasons. One, they are after a competitive advantage where they get to see their enemies easier and they also get higher frame rates, or maybe you are someone that just really wants to be able to make use of that 120Hz monitor. Unfortunately, this is one of the few games where I don't recommend that you go all the way down to the lower settings, as I actually think that this gives you a competitive disadvantage, not an advantage. The reason why I say this comes down to two things. One, the performance uplift that we see from going from the very maximum to the very minimum is not that great, probably around 20 to 40% depending on the scene, which when you take into consideration the massive downgrade in the visual quality is not really a great trade-off. And two, due to the image's instability, it becomes incredibly difficult to actually spot your enemies through the rest of the game's noise, so it doesn't actually make it easier to spot your enemies whatsoever. It's also worth pointing out that the game seems to crush the black levels quite a bit, which means that even increasing the brightness doesn't really make it any easier to see enemies in shadows. Taking all of this information into consideration, I thought that it would probably be best to try and focus on a decent balance between the performance and the visuals rather than focusing too heavily on the competitive settings, as there appears to be very little value here, especially when you take into consideration just how subjective some of these choices are going to be based on how soft you like an image or how much grain you can deal with. The graphical settings that we finalised in the end will be on screen now, and as you will likely be able to tell, we went for a fairly low end mix. However, due to so many of the graphical features in the game not being available in the options menu, we are actually much closer to the maximum settings kind of visual wise than what you would likely expect. For instance, we've got no control over the lighting quality, the model quality, the draw distance, the object detail or anything like that. It's all very simple here, so really all we're tweaking is some of the finer details such as the ambient occlusion, and we can do the anti-aliasing, but there's no really big all-encompassing options here. This is likely due to Call of Duty supposedly going for a very handcrafted experience when it comes to the gameplay, with the lighting in particular having such a big role in how matches play out. For instance, there are going to be night vision modes, and they're doing this thing called spectral lighting, which means that they're actually rendering lighting which is out of the visual range. All in all, this means that it's likely that we're going to see a lot less options than what we're used to seeing in a Call of Duty game, so we're not going to have that tweakability or scalability that we have become accustomed to. Thankfully, it does appear that the developers are taking a lot of care in making sure that the game runs well on a wide range of hardware, so it might not be a major issue. But please do bear in mind that, like I mentioned earlier, we did not get the chance to test out the game on the 32 versus 32 ground war mode, so things could be a little bit different over there. However, I just don't think they will. We did see fairly decent performance gains by going over to our optimized settings, and that would boost us by around 10 to 30% depending on the scene, and that should, in theory at least, put us above 60 FPS at these settings during a 32 versus 32, obviously dependent on what's going on screen. Anyway, with all that said, I think that's going to be me done for today. In conclusion, I was very happy with the performance of the Sapphire Pulse RX 570 running the Modern Warfare beta at maximum, at optimised, and maybe not so much at the minimum settings, but definitely the optimised and the max settings I was fairly impressed with. If I do get the opportunity to go back and test the 32 versus 32 ground mode on this graphics card, I will do. I just can't make you any promises right now. Before I get off, I just want to say a massive thank you for checking out the video, guys. If you like the video, you can like the video, and if you disliked it, you can dislike it. Just please do let us know why you disliked it in the comment section down below. If you are new around here, then please do consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. If you've got any questions, suggestions, or feedback, also in the comment section below, that would be great, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Once again, from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we will catch you later. Bye bye.